This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000 Houses podcast. I'm here with BJ Gremillion and Brad Young, and they're over in Gilbert, Arizona. And we're going to be talking. These guys have really, they've done thousands of houses since 2008. So they're clipping along at a good pace. I am going to get into this podcast, and let's find out what makes them tick and how they were able to accomplish such numbers and what kind of strategies they're using. So with no further ado, how you doing, BJ?
Doing great. Thanks for having us on.
How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. So I think it's always kind of nice to get a baseline, like where you're both from. So we'll start with BJ, kind of, give me the bullet points of how you grew up and where you're from and how you found your way to this business.
Sure. So come from a large family of 8 and originally from Colorado Springs, and moved out to Arizona because my wife is from here. And so I'd never really been to Arizona and come to love it though. This is home for us and plan on being here for a long time. And it's kind of funny. So I met my business partner, Brad, here as we actually moved into the same neighborhood, and it was our first home. And, we started talking and realizing, man, there's a lot of similarities going on here so we both come from families of 8, and both went and knocked doors for security companies for 3 years and endured that torture for that period of time, but learned a lot, obviously, during that time. And then, we just started talking, and I think there was a lot that we could relate with. And so anyway, that's how we met each other, and then ended up going into business about a year after we met each other. And so I'll let Brad.
But what was your work history though before that? You were just
Sure.
selling for the security companies, or
Yeah. So
go
during
to college and get a degree in engineering and then go into the security business? Like, or what?
You know what? Funny story about college. I went to the administrator and I said, look, what's the fastest way I can get out of here with a degree? Like, what do I need to do? And they said, all right, you could do psychology or sociology. I said, cool, I'll do psychology, and got my degree just so I could appease my father-in-law, because I'm sure he was, nervous about me taking his daughter's hand and not having any type of idea what I was going to do with my life. And so the way I found my first job, I actually asked a buddy of mine, and this was, mind you, I think a month before I graduated, and I had no plan. And I said, look, what are your plans? So he said, hey, I'm going to work for Edward Jones. I'm like, I don't know what that is, and I don't know what you do, but are they hiring? He's like, yeah, I think so. Just, go down here, talk to this guy. So I went over there, talked to him, and got the job. Come to find out, I think they pretty much take anyone with a pulse. You just had to have a degree and a pulse. So I got that job, not out of any merit of my own, but so I, ended up working for Edward Jones, a financial advisor. And quick story, it's kind of funny. They, in their training, they literally give you a phone book, and they tell you to start with A, and you just start calling. So, and you're selling bonds on the phone to random people. There is no list. There is no secret. You're just calling. And so,
Hard job. Hard job.
It was a great job. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right?
Every year he tells me he wants to go back. He's like, gosh, if I could be a bond salesman.
Dying to get back into that business. And then they would tell you to go knock door to door and do the same thing with the shirt, a suit and tie. And so I did that for a year and learned a lot. And, for some reason, I keep getting drawn back to knocking doors for whatever reason. And it was during that time that it was 2008, we all know what happened there with the housing market. And I was watching Brad, and I actually did a ride along with him one time. And one of the days, and I mean, he should have had 3 cell phones, because he's talking to people nonstop, and people that are losing their home, and he's going and, helping people that are in foreclosure, or, helping out. He also speaks Spanish as well. And so he was helping out a lot of the Hispanic families that there was a need there, and buying homes, selling homes, going to the auction, just kind of doing it. It was the Wild West in Arizona. I'm sure it was similar where,
same
Texas. Here. Yep. So we were just, I watched him that one day, and I was like, man, he's having a lot more fun than I am. And, he was just out there hustling. And I was like, I think I want to try my hand in it. And so I got my license and kind of the rest is history. I won't tell you all the in between there, but yeah, we ended up working together after.
So Brad, how did you come to find the real estate business?
So I was doing the same thing as BJ, was knocking doors, and my brother-in-law called me, and he was a REO agent or broker, and he at the time was closing about 2 deals a day for a bunch of the larger asset management groups and things like that. And he had a BPO division, all that stuff was going on. He was kind of humming along, and he said, "Hey, will you move out here? I'll match your pay. I'll get you. I need someone I can trust, And so we did. We agreed, and I came out and bought my first house. And a week later, the stock market crashed, and it was like, oh crap. And so started working with him, and he was great. Taught me a ton, and probably just had a difference in vision. Kind of where we would want to go with things, which is ultimately why we parted ways after a few years, and was there for probably like 3 years or so, and then from.
So he was in the listing and selling business.
Listing and selling business. Now he also introduced me to flipping houses. I was doing labor on the houses in the beginning. Just go there, trash them out, paint, strip carpet, repaint, lay tile, that kind of stuff. And mainly he had me doing, cash for keys, because I bilingual and there was a need for it, or go sit at houses on the weekends because the banks require them to be open on Sundays and stuff like that. So you get $50 literally to go sit at a house on a Sunday. And I'm like, at the time I was like, hey, I'll do whatever for $1 at this point. So we're just doing it. And yeah, he was great. We learned a lot about flipping houses with him, and eventually, yeah, just kind of grew into a different space. So.
Okay. So tell me about the first deal y'all did together.
Us two, okay.
Well, I start with like just your first deal, just was it a wholesale or retail, and did you make any money?
So first deal I did was a flip, and I think it was one of those things where it was like kind of like you're putting all the chips in at this point, And I can remember we moved out here with a little bit of money in the bank because we had done well with sales, and we're like, hey, you know what? We're 23 years old, and to have 50 grand was cool, and then really quickly with 18% hard money loans, you can burn through that real fast. And that's all that existed for the first 5 years of flipping houses was 18% rates. And that's all we knew. So we just did it. And so I burned through that real quick. And I remember looking at my wife, Catherine and I, we were like, what are we going to do? Because we've burned through everything in savings. There is no, and then it was like, call it whatever you want to call it, but answer to prayer, whatever you want to call it, like got an offer. Ended up being a cash close in 10 days type of deal. I think we made like 10 or 15 grand. It wasn't like we made a killing, but we got all our money back and made some money. And then we rolled into 2. And then from there, it just snowballed. So
yeah, my first private money's under a different strategy though, was 18% also, but it was kind of churn and burn, kind of buy the house, create the note, sell the note. I was paying 18% interest plus $2,000 kicker because I wouldn't have these houses for 30 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the lesson was like, people, when you're paying 18%, I said, I'm paying 1 month of 18% plus $2,000. Right. My house is making 15 or 20,000. So I get to keep 17 or 18. So I mean,
beautiful.
Yes, somebody screw me every day like that, please. What about your first deal?
Yeah, so I wanted to obviously have a piece of the pie when it came to flips, and so I didn't have enough funds. So I actually went to my parents and said, "Hey, there's this deal. Got at the auction. I've done enough of them. I've helped enough investors to do this." And so I've watched them make money. And that was really the beauty of it, was being able to start off with investors and play with their money for a minute and just see how they did it, learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes as well. And then hopefully replicate their success. So, I just started with a small condo in Mesa, and it was, I think we bought it for $30,000. We put $15,000 into it, and got it under contract really quickly. We were set to make $12,000. I was ecstatic, could not be happier. And then the appraiser came and and appraise it for 12 grand less. So I ended up making, I think, $300 on my very first flip, which was, it was a learning lesson, but I went ahead and rolled off $300 of that right back into the next flip, and
put it all back in, didn't you?
I put it all back in, baby.
Oh,
Yeah, all
risk it for
those
the
chips
business.
back in it, and thankfully, that one ended up making 15,000. It was a single family home flip, and so there were some things I learned. Like I didn't, condos are great and all, but they're a little bit riskier. And so the single family stuff is kind of where I stuck with for the next, both.
Hey, well, where I was headed with this was that first check is the one that really opens your eyes. Now, maybe not yours, PJ. Yours was like,
right.
I don't know. You woke up kind of slow. You had to do another one.
Story of my life.
The first one, I only made $3,000 on my first deal, but it didn't matter. That's all I needed.
No.
It was proof of concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I knew I was dumb, and I knew I did a lot of things wrong. And I knew, I said, well, that's as bad as it gets, I'll be okay. Of course, I bought my first 100 houses on credit cards because that's the skyline of San Antonio behind me. And in 1996, you could buy houses in the lesser parts of town, 1.7 million people, for $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. $25,000 was a nice big house to me, at the time. Of course, there was much nicer neighborhoods and much, maybe the median house price at the time was 100 grand or 150 grand at the time, but we had the cheapest houses in the planet. San Antonio, I've come to learn, had the cheapest houses in the United States for quality, of living. A great town, the smallest big town in the world. We're always behind everybody, but we're big. And 65% Hispanic. And I was going around, give me 10 grand on this card and that'll buy the house, and give me 5 grand on this card and it'll fix the house, and I'll be 15,000 in it, and I'll sell or finance it for 35,000, and then I'll sell the note for 34, for 32, and I'll make some money. And I was selling the houses 5% down with a 5% throwaway second, which I never threw away. I collected my $25 a month forever on those things. I especially liked the $25 a month ones where they quit paying me. I'd send my notice every year to keep it alive, and then 10 years later, they'd call for a payoff on the house and they'd find my lien. And, now I'm owed 7-8 grand, you know what I mean? Penalties and everything. So I never threw them away. I had hundreds and hundreds of little $2,500 seconds, $3,500 seconds, $2,000 seconds. I had hundreds, and all I would put them on, 20-year notes or whatever. I didn't care. Just give me my money over time. But a lot of people chose to blow me off. And then they were they would call me and say, well, you're not really gonna, the title company, can we get you to forgive this? I said, hell no. I'm not forgiving. I've been sending them a note. I helped them with half their down payment so they could get into this thing. They promised me they'd pay me $20 a month, and they just stiffed me. So no, I want my money. I want the back. The thing was, I'd give it to them at 0% interest for a year. After that, I'd go to the 10%, and then because if they wanted to pay it off in a year, I wouldn't even charge them interest. Just get a side job and get it over with. No one hardly ever did that. They would go but in the fine print, it said it goes to the maximum allowable by law if they ever get past due. And so they were all at 18%. If I wanted to force the issue, sometimes I give them a little break on the interest, but normally I said, no, just pay me. These houses are worth way, way, way more money. And, instead of y'all making 100 grand off this house, you're going to make 92 because you're going to pay me my 8 grand.
It starts adding up, right?
Yeah. Or you can give me the house. I'll be happy to take the house. And that was the other reason why I kept the seconds is because technically I'm supposed to get notified if there's a foreclosure, and I had the right to buy out the first. And so through the years, as these houses became worth more and more and more money, when people were going to foreclosure, I would get notices that one of the people that owed me $2,500 was in foreclosure, and what the house was worth today and what they owed was light years apart, lots of room. And I'd say, no, I'm gonna buy out the first to protect my $2,500 interest. And now I had $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 equities.
Man, smart.
So, but what I would do is I would buy the house, I would seller finance it with 5% down and a 5% throwaway second. And I would sell the note for 83% of the face value before the first payment was ever made. You know, it was pristine. These are the old days. And so the 83 plus the 5% that I had was 87%. I mean, it's pretty much like regular closing, you know what I mean? Pay the realtors and everything. It wasn't too far off. And then I had a $2,500 second to boot that I got to keep. So it worked out real good. It worked out good. I bought my first 100 houses on credit cards until my banker called me up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm buying houses." And they gave me my first $1 million line of credit. You know, I kept sending him the HUDs when I bought it and when I sold it. I didn't put in there how much the rehab was, but
Sure.
he thought he'd figure that out. But so what is your strategy today? What are y'all doing today? You said you've done since 2008 thousands of houses. My instinct says that maybe you're wholesaling a lot because that's a lot of numbers. But what are you doing?
I would say we were cranking a lot more on the flips, obviously back when a little more in the heyday when you could do well into the hundreds in a single year. I think 2011, 2012, 2013, you know, those three years, if you just look at the side of the flips, not including wholesales or any of that stuff, it's probably in the 350, 400, 350 to 450 range of homes flipped.
Man, that's incredible. I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine the horsepower it took, you know, like
it was, I would say that was a pretty wild time. And honestly, all of our flaws and wrinkles and holes, like you saw them, they were exposed at that time. What you had going for you was you were buying homes worked for $40,000 and your spreads were 50 grand each or better. So you had good spreads and
you could suffer some mistakes, right?
You could weather that, right? Because occasionally you have something you didn't see up front in due diligence. Well, the next 20 homes made you better, you know, more than whole. So at the same time, we were doing a lot at the auctions. We helped a handful of investors build some pretty decent portfolios, mainly buying multifamily, smaller multifamily, like 12 unit and under. But they picked up about 300 doors there. And so we'd pick up a deal at the auction, wholesale it to them kind of every time. So had a handful of people in that same boat that we would service. And
well, when you have a setup like that, though, you really have to give a fair wholesale price, because what they call wholesaling now sometimes is just bullshit.
No, we had a flat fee.
Yeah.
We knew what they were buying. We knew what they wanted. They told us what they were willing to pay for it. We had a fee for the service. So it wasn't like we were like, dude, we're making 50 grand a shot. It was, hey, we're making a few $1,000, but something's getting sold almost every day. So it was okay.
Yeah. And that really helps when you're doing that volume, because you probably couldn't handle all the houses if you had to rehab them and put them on.
Oh, no, we didn't. Yeah. None of that stuff. We didn't touch any rehab. We didn't touch.
Part of the wholesaling was to just mitigate the load on your back, I would guess.
Totally. And we didn't do the property management. We didn't do any of that stuff at that point. In fact, we ended up outsourcing management from other investors to that group, because they, you know, within 12 months, they had 300 units. So they were ready to roll. And they're from the Dallas area. They're pretty well versed in multifamily. And so they knew what they were doing, getting into it, and worked out well. So
yeah, so I see these guys. I got 200 people on my wholesale list. I said, well, man, if you're really wholesaling houses, you only need 3 people. You really only need 1. Yeah. But you know, you have 3 in case that one guy's on vacation. You know, that's the only reason you have 3 is because if you're really wholesaling a house, it goes to any investor that is really in the business. I mean, he'll take it if you're really wholesaling the house. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's true.
So how many people did you have when you were doing that kind of volume?
We didn't have, it was just us and Bo at the time.
Yeah.
We had one guy kind of trying to run the books, and it was atrocious because we didn't, you know, we were all young and just shooting. We weren't aiming at anything. We were just shooting. And
Yeah, ready, fire, aim, right?
That's
Ready, fire,
exactly
aim.
what was going on. And it wasn't until like then we started a few years later, we got into some land and had another builder build some specs for us. And people said we were crazy. Oh, it's too early. You can't build specs. This was like 2014 and 15. And then we did it and sold them and it made money and it worked. So we started slowly acquiring land and preparing for some turn in the market. And then so now BJ runs all the wholesales, all the flips, and anything in Phoenix or Tennessee or any of the other markets that we're in, and then I run the land side.
I really want you guys to talk to the audience here, to the younger investors, because one of the biggest mistakes I made, and it took me years to straighten it out, years. And matter of fact, when I finally got serious about it, I finally hired the top bookkeeper I could get my hands on that would devote their time. And they went back 4 years and they tied everything back to the penny, transactions in and out, which was about a little over 400 transactions, coming in. And then, so it was close to 1,000 because I sold some of those houses 2 or 3 times, unfortunately, some of them. But having your books in order, I can't tell you enough how you really need to get that straight from the beginning, because I lost not only the $240,000 it took to straighten me out in 2 years, but I lost opportunity with banks. I lost opportunity with super cheap money because I couldn't produce a financial that would tie back to anything.
I would say that's the biggest piece, right? Because we were in the same boat. And even we're still paying a firm out of Plano, Texas, that they still help us manage tax strategy and preparation. It's not cheap, but we realize that, hey, you don't know what you make until you know what you make, right? Like you think as entrepreneurs and runners and gunners, anybody that's in the wholesale business is somewhat of an adrenaline junkie, right? And so they think they know the numbers really well, and they're like, okay, I bought the home for 100 and I'm selling for 150. I made $50,000. But all those little ancillary expenses in between, that aren't accounted for usually get lost. How many wire fees? I mean, at one time when we were getting this caught up, we had like $20,000 in wire fees that we needed to catch up on and get accounted for correctly and apply them correctly. And then when it came time to buy multi-million-dollar pieces of land, we went to a bank and bank said, sure, here's 4% interest. No problem. Interest only loan. Sure. Your books look fantastic. And they would give us those loans, but prior to any of that organization, no, they would laugh at us.
At one point, when I tried to do it, like in the middle of my career, we were moving so fast. I think it was a year that we did 150 houses, and it was just me and my partner and a couple of office people that probably shouldn't have been office people. We figured out that we had lost $800 per transaction by not reviewing our HUDs right.
On 150 deals,
800 a transaction. So when you start thinking, well, these people are expensive, or this bookkeeper's expensive, or this office administrator's expensive, it's not, because if they're doing their job, there's money going. Ron LeGrand told me one day, I stood up, they go through the crowd, and I was in the crowd. There's like 300 people there one day, and I just finished interviewing Ron LeGrand right before y'all, as a matter of fact. Wow. But Ron, said, how many of y'all are looking to do your first house? And a whole bunch of hands went up. And how many of y'all have done at least one house? And how many 3 and 4 and 5? And then it happened to be one of my better years, and I was doing 150 houses. He says, how many people do more than 10 houses a month? And I raised my hand, and I was the only one in there. And he says, stand up. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I've been on pace to do 150 houses. I only got 2 months left in this year, so I'm going to hit it. He says, well, you're a dumbass. You need to do half as many and take twice as much and have a friggin' life. And I kind of took that home with me and thought, it's kind of embarrassing to call me dumbass in front of 300 people, but he let me off the hook at the end. There was it seemed like 30 seconds worth of silence. I know it wasn't that long, but then he said, well, a lot of y'all could only wish you're as dumb as this guy, but may I suggest that you do half as much and make twice as much money and have a life, get under control. And he was right. I was making a bunch of money through the front, but it was going out the back. People were screwing me. People were double, my partners were padding contractor bids and all kinds of stuff was happening to me.
Mm.
But like you said, it was enough to still be a big winner, you know. If it doesn't kill you, it'll make you better, you know.
Sure.
There was some days I thought maybe it would kill me, man, because I thought, you know, it's just I was using like he said, you were always on the phone the first time I met you. I was using 6,700 minutes a month on my cell phone. My cell phone was $1,800 back in the day when you didn't buy any plans.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, and we thought we were all cool, like we were really had it going on. We were the dumbest guys on the planet. It's like, get some help, you dumb shit. You know, like, what are you doing? I mean, I had so many hats in my truck. I couldn't. Sometimes I'd have 3 hats on at one time. You know, like, yeah, foreclose. Yeah, take the loan. No, evict that guy.
Yep. And you know what's funny too, because I think, you know, we're in a mastermind. We've been in masterminds now for 3 or 4 years, and in the beginning, I distinctly remember it being all about the numbers, right? So we would go there, and it would be to your story, right? Like, everyone is comparing, how many deals did you do this year? How many deals did you do? And they were asking the wrong question, right? Because yeah, you could be doing 150, 200 deals and everyone's admiring you for the amount of work that you're doing. But then you start asking them the important questions. Well, how much are you actually keeping, you know, of that? And what are you making per deal? And so to your point, I think when it comes to real estate, most people, you know, the old saying where, you know, that energy is wasted on the youth. I think it's absolutely true. But what that does is, as we get older and as we age and as we've made mistakes and done things enough times and learned the lessons enough times, you start to realize that out of necessity, you need to slow down and you need to actually start thinking about what you're doing, because, you know, and it's funny.
You can't keep that pace.
You can't. And it's also like as you start to do bigger deals and work smarter and not so hard, right? Where you watch these old timers that, you know, you hang around with at these events that are sitting in the back of the room and not saying much. And it's usually the quiet ones in the back, you know, that have been there for a while, and they're not getting up there and, you know, bragging to everyone. It's usually those guys are the ones you want to hang out with and listen to, because they've got a lot of life lessons that you can learn from. And so I think that what we have learned over the past, you know, 1.5 years, 2 years, really, we started to realize, like, hey, yeah, we could continue down this path of wholesaling homes and flipping and you know, go in that direction. And it's a nice business. It's great to have. But I'll tell you what, like, we're starting to do, you know, land deals and we're doing the development side of it. And we're making in one land deal what we've made in the past 10 years in flipping homes. And so you start to do that a couple of times, you're like, man, I missed the boat, you know, like I was working like really hard.
The young guy at the front of the room, I did 450 deals this year. The old guy, you know, and you know, I don't need to take time off. And the old guy in the back of the room is, I did 3 deals, you know, made 4 times as much as you, and I've been on vacation 6 months this year.
Exactly.
Like, okay, let's start sitting in the back of the room with these guys.
Yes. Yes.
Much more appealing. So how many people do you have in your operation?
There's about 35 in total. And that includes operators in the field. We've got heavy machinery running on some of the development projects. So that includes guys out in the field, not running on the investment side necessarily.
So you kind of morphed into, I mean, entrepreneurs always are morphing, but I always thought, try to morph into a business, you know, that kind of runs off the exhaust of your other business or the waste of your other business. Like if you're making trees into lumber, then you have a stack of sawdust that you end up with. You know, you could pay to have it hauled off, or you can get in partners with somebody that knows how to make that sawdust into pencils and go into business with them. You know what I mean? Or boards or whatever the hell they make with the sawdust. You know,
yeah, sure.
Put some poison in it, put it in a bag and call it, you know, ant poison. You know, I don't know. But, you know, the other thing was, though, it was hard for me to learn this, but I had to go find the right partner that he would take he was already in that business. He already knew that business back and forth. I was just going to supply the sawdust. I wasn't even going to look at that business anymore, but I was going to be in partners with him. But I didn't, it was everything I could do to run this business right. So if I started another business, I would make sure that guy, he was the one that was in the office. He's the one that hired the personnel. I was to supply sawdust for whatever percentage that was worth, and that's all I wanted to do. Cause I was going to have to deal with that sawdust one way or the other.
Sure.
And so it took me a little while to figure that out. I would go try to learn how to make pencils out of sawdust. And then this other business would be going under while I was trying to figure that out. And
100%. We can empathize with that a lot. So
absolutely.
Ken D'Angelo, the founder of Homevestors, told me that he one time he said he lived here and his first franchise was in San Antonio. And one Christmas party, everyone was out having a good time. And he and I were in the back parlor with the fireplace going with a cigar, and we talked for hours. And he said one time, entrepreneurs rarely end up with the business that they start. They morph to the path of least resistance to the most money, and it's usually not even close to the business that they started with. And so I find that to be true. You guys find that to be true?
Yeah, I think we've slowly learned our lesson. There's certain things that we tried to create this ecosystem. Okay, you have these specific divisions within your building organization or home flipping organization or whatever, and some of them don't do well. And then some of them you're like, oh, we can monetize the crud out of this, so let's do it. But yes, 100%. I think I would say we line up with that pretty closely.
Yeah, and I think like our original plan, to your point, in 2008, really, and then as we started our company together, about 2-3 years later. We wanted to be the one-stop realty solution, right? You've probably heard this story before.
Yeah. You want to be the everything, completely vertical.
Yeah, we wanted to do it all. So we went as wide as you could possibly go. So we were like, hey, let's have a property management company. We're going to have a construction company. We'll have our house flipping business. We'll have a plumbing business. We'll do an accounting business. Like we're just saying, hey man, let's just take on the world. Cause again, we're young and we can do it all. And we're entrepreneurs. Right. And so you learn, I mean, it takes a while, right? Like, unfortunately, we're not the fastest learners. It takes us a minute to figure things out. But, you get beat down enough times where you're like, you know what, that whole going deep idea makes a little bit more sense now. Like now I understand why people would laugh at us when we would tell them we wanted to be this one-stop realty solution, because you just can't do it. And the ones that do, to your point, they partner with people and they find the people that are already doing it at a high level. And then they just say, look, you can take your piece and I'm not interested in doing the whole thing myself. Let's partner together and start something great. And so it's taken time, and we're still working through it. But I think that we've realized, hey, there's a couple money sources that make a lot of sense. And, let's just stop worrying so much about this stuff over here. And let's start going really deep into these areas. And so it's made a big difference for us, just that little mind shift.
So I at one time had so much private money, I couldn't find enough deals at my underwriting criteria to get it all out. And I knew if I didn't get it out, I was going to lose the private lenders because they're not going to wait for me forever to get their money out. So I started a hard money loan business with a guy that was a managing partner of Coopers and Libran in Austin for 15 years, and had taken companies public and way smarter than I was. I mean, like way smarter. If I have anything going for me, it's just I have a shitload of common sense. I can take a blow and get back up and dust myself off and keep coming, not really the smartest plan, but that's how I did it. So I had to start this hard money company so I could loan it to my competitors for 6 months on the quick flips and everything and keep it occupied till I needed it. It was I needed it for long term if I got it out, because I do that seller financing strategy. But I did that private lending business for a long time, just occupying the money I couldn't get to right now. Because and I'm sure you believe the same thing. Just because you got access to a lot of money doesn't mean you start running out and making stupid deals. I mean, my underwriting guidelines to buy houses and to sell houses hasn't changed since the day I figured out what worked, and for me, it's like 65 cents on the dollar. That's, and that ends up being about the volume that I'm comfortable at. You know what I mean? I could do a lot more volume if I want to go to 70 or 75 cents, but I'm working a lot harder and there's more pieces with less margin. It doesn't make any sense. And so I wrote this book, The Art of Private Lending, and kind of use it as a marketing piece. I teach people how to loan out the money and make 12% or 14% or 16% or whatever up to user it is in your state. But then about halfway through, it's like, if you just want to get paid 8% and I'll do all this stuff, you can be passive, and so that's like one of the businesses I have is just private lending for my competitors. When I can't find enough houses, I got to keep this money out working. So
that's awesome.
And I never had to I didn't have a desk in that office. I never went, that office I talked to my partner on the phone. I never went to that office ever. I don't even have a desk in my own office, my own building with the house flipping. There's no desk. I don't have a desk.
Wow.
And I did it on purpose. So, but in my situation, I have a partner that runs that side. My job is really to make sure that they never run out of money. If they want to buy something, now I got to go to work. Like, where are we getting them? Where are we getting 450,000? Where are we getting 600,000? Where are we getting? That's my job.
Yep.
A lot of basketball games back before they started kneeling. A lot of basketball games. Now it's just a lot of dinners.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
So when you do these developments, when you did the flips and everything, so this all kind of one-time cash or temporary cash, but so where's your forever cash play? Are you buying apartments, or what are you doing?
I mean, we started acquiring rentals, mainly single family, sprinkled in with some smaller multifamily. We had a complex identified in an area that we were in already, and there was some details in a trailing 12 that didn't line up with the previous one. For something didn't make sense. We backed out. Probably should have kept that deal. I think hindsight's 2020. That would have been a decent one to be owning right now.
Speaking in today's terms, right?
Sure.
Everybody could have been a hero if they knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we would have kept everything.
So mainly just single family holdings right now, again, with some smaller, like fourplexes, duplexes, things like that are mixed in. And I think we're at the point now. Yeah, we're looking for that stuff. We just haven't been real proactive in it. Kind of probably.
Yeah, I was telling BJ before you showed up that I use the money from the wholesales and the retails and the seller financing, which is a temporary cash flow stream because it's going to expire. I use all that and to focus on a forever strategy, which is something that you buy, that you collect on, and it ends when you say it ends. It could go on for 10 years. It could go on for 100 years. It just depends on when you want out. And I call that my forever strategy. And my forever strategy is mini storages, boat storages, semi-truck parking, just storage, open air parking, and I live my whole life keeping the money coming in from those other strategies. But the end goal is, how much of this forever stuff can I buy? Because if I buy enough of it, you don't need to flip any more houses. You just need to keep up with the rents and keep up with the tenants in those places and keep raising the rents and reducing the debt so that the gaps get bigger every year. It's been a really good business for me. And since I do seller financing, I don't get the appreciation or the depreciation. So I have to go out and buy like $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million facility so I can finally get depreciation.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. We try to capture a fair bit of depreciation. If you buy 25 homes a year that you're just going to keep, get some good ones and keep them, then would be all right there. We're looking right now at an RV storage. Actually, it's smaller. It's a couple acres, but yeah, that's we'd love something like that.
You're a smart man to get into that, where you don't have to deal with all the home maintenance, repairs, and all that stuff. You're just dealing with pads, dirt, sometimes utilities, whatever the case may be. But yeah, that's the dream, honestly. Like, and I can see why you're going that direction. It's smart on your part.
Well, I started buying storages in 1991.
Yeah. Did you?
So, today there's like close to 1,300 people that owe me $100 a month.
That's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
if I may share a victory, and this is the biggest smile you'll ever see me smile, I paid all those bitches off last year too. So woohoo!
Did you really? Hey, congratulations.
That is cool.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
But how old are you, BJ? May I ask?
39.
37.
Okay. I didn't find my ass with both hands till I was 34. You guys are light years ahead of me. I'm 61. So I could have done it a lot better, a lot faster, but I had to learn all those things I had to learn all those lessons that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And they definitely slow you down and they set you back and they wear you out. I think I almost walked away from the house flipping business because I just couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't make myself put $1 million a year in a box and throw it away. I said, I'm just going to live off my storages and I'm just going to let the house thing go away. And that's when I couldn't do it though. I thought, you're just going to throw away $1 million a year. I mean, I know you're tired, but could you at least pay someone $500 a year and you could keep the other $5? I mean, how do you do that? So I went to CG to learn how to get my ass out of the business and still keep some of it. Well, as it turned out, I didn't have to give up half my income. I made so much more with other people helping me that I make more than I ever made. And I pay those people, the 500, 600,000 a year in salaries, combined. Yeah. So again, we read that theory in the book, do less, make more, delegate. I read it 1,000 times. But I'm, like you said, I got to get hit in the head with a hammer with an idea before I get onto it.
Yep.
And I think you guys, I really love it that you guys are in your mid to late 30s and that you really have a handle on everything. And
we do a good job faking it.
Yeah, far from it.
Well, but you're well on your way. If you're in CG or you get in these masterminds, that listen to those old timers and get straightened out now, because now you've been hitting the nose enough times to pay attention.
Yeah.
When we first start out, we don't need, that's not how we do it.
Yep. 100%.
You get hit in the nose a couple times. Okay, now how do you protect from that left hook from that tenant? Because damn, he about knocked me out. So I actually started doing some land development too, but I started developing for and maybe Gilbert's a good place for that, mobile home lots.
Yeah, so we'd love to get into that.
I was seller financing, and then I was seller financing the mobile home on top of it. Like I was making it pay on the bottom and the top,
That is incredible. Yeah, we there's some mobile home parks a little bit further out from where we're at, but it's pretty tough right now to get.
I'm not talking about parks. I'm talking about taking 100 acres, making it into, 150 half-acre lots that you can put a mobile home on. And now your sales department is the mobile home dealerships. They are your sales department. They don't even charge.
Yeah.
And then I, went to the factory and tried to become a dealer. The problem is they can't give you any product right now. We ordered 20 homes. It took 1 year and 2 months to get them. But on the surface, it was a good idea, and hopefully it comes back. But, we were paying 60 cents. We were paying 60 cents, wholesale, 60 cents on the dollar. So we had a 40% profit built in the minute they drove out and set the home up on our land that we were owner financing. What are you laughing?
We did this exact same thing. Yeah. And now we can't get units. So we have all these lots and we're like, you're telling me it's going to be almost 18 months before we can even get something out here to set. And we're like, cool.
But you're right. The business model makes a ton of sense. Yeah. It's just, we can't get the
product. You could rent, I had this other idea and I've never done it because I don't have time. And I'm trying to stay in my lane really hard. But what if you had a virtual mobile home park where it was just this lot and that lot over there, that you just rented the lots, but they're half acres to an acre. You know what I mean? Because if you go to a mobile home park, they're like this,
Mm-hmm.
Like you can reach out your window and put your hand through the other person's window, and just rent those lots. But then you would have a virtual mobile home that had no limit. Yeah. If you buy a mobile home park and it has 100 units, I mean, that's all, it's 100 units. It's all it'll ever be. But if you did virtual, non-contiguous lots, you could grow that thing to 1,000 units. I just,
I'm with you.
I thought about it, and you don't get any depreciation from renting the land, but there's also no real maintenance on it. Septic tank in the land, it's hard to mess up.
Totally.
So what advice do you have to the young guys out there, maybe before we wrap it up?
Ooh.
I think for me personally, on my journey, the thing again that I've learned more than anything is it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. The focus has been so much more on like taxes, right? And I know it's all about debt and taxes, right? When it really comes down to it, if you can understand those two principles really well, you're going to do great. But it took me a minute to really think about, the other side of it, right? You got money coming in the front door, but then you've got this back door that's just as wide as your front door, and it's going out just as quick as it's coming in. And so it's important to take some time and actually just, have a structure around that, have a team around that, and then pay really well the experts in the accounting world to take care of that issue for you. Don't try and do it yourself. Don't think that you're smarter than everyone else. Find some, awesome accountant, and they're going to be expensive, and that's okay. As long as they know what they're doing, because they're going to save you more money in the long run than you ever spent really on them. And so I think we're at a point now where we spend, last year it was about $250,000 on our, entire accounting team. Now that's for several businesses and
No, I get it. But the point is, it's like, one is you can see the holes and you can start to work on plugging them. Like, where's this money draining out at? Well, look at this expense. Wow, that's my biggest expense. How do I cut that expense? I mean,
exactly.
Usually that's the first. I don't really know how to read these things to the nth degree, but the one thing I did learn is you find your top 5 or 6 expenses and see, start with the first one and how can you cut that?
Yep.
To pay for the
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was always like, trust my gut, right? Instead of trusting your gut, you should probably just go look at the numbers and what do the numbers tell you? And then that will tell the story of what you need to fix. So it took me a long time to figure that out.
I actually ran my business by the hair on the back of my neck for so many years. Yep. And how I did it was I just assumed I was broke all the time. I assumed I was broke. When they finally gave me a financial report, I said, hell, I could have quit 10 years ago.
That's a good strategy.
I didn't have any idea what I was worth. I had no idea.
Yeah, I love that.
What was going on?
Yeah.
All right, my friends. If anybody's out there and wants to learn how a dumbass figured out how to flip 100 houses a year, you can go to My Life in 1,000 Houses, Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. It's literally a story about how a dumbass just kept getting knocked down and got back up and said, man, how do you stop that from happening? Because that hurts, and just kind of keep morphing. And a lot of people asked me, said, are you sure you want to put this book out? And I said, why would you ask me that? This is before I put it out and people were reading it. And I said, why would you say that? And he goes, you're not looking real smart in a lot of these pages. And I said, well, I said, it's the truth. I mean, I'm not going to go here and blow smoke up everybody's ass. I mean, maybe some other people can shortcut their way by reading the story, but this is how I learned the lessons, and I had to learn every one of them the hard way. I'm kind of like BJ. I had to touch the burner twice.
Yeah.
Hey, it burns on the right hand. I wonder if it burns on the left hand.
Yeah, right. I got a couple of kids that are like that too.
Yeah, well, all right, my friend, I appreciate you, and maybe we'll meet down the road and talk again about your new development you have or something coming up. All right.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us.
All right, my pleasure. We're out of here.
See ya.
Okay, see ya.